What if one day you woke up with the feeling that your life was over even though you were still breathing? He was certain that the war had taken everything from him: honor, purpose, and will to live. The gunfire had stopped, the noise of the explosions was behind him, but inside, on the silent battlefield of his mind, the war still raged on. Have you ever been through this? Not a war with weapons, perhaps, but an internal war where it seems your mission is over, that you're no longer useful, that everything beautiful about you is trapped in the past. Imagine a soldier returning home after years of combat. Outside, everyone celebrates. He's back alive. But inside, he feels the exact opposite. The memories weigh more than the backpack he carried in the field. Every step on the quiet city sidewalk seems harder than running amidst the bombs. He looks in the mirror and no longer recognizes himself. A hero? No. In his mind, he only sees someone broken, guilty, tired. And it is at this point that the story you are about to hear today begins to connect with thousands of lives transformed by pain. Moving stories of soldiers reborn after war, when everything seemed lost. Sometimes the greatest battle isn't the one that makes the news, but the one no one sees. The soldier in our video believed his mission was over. His uniform now lay at the back of the closet, a memento, his medals stored in a box he avoided opening. He thought the war chapter was over, and with it, the rest of the story. It was as if the world had moved on, leaving him frozen in a scene from the past. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you. The soldier isn't just a character. He represents every person who has ever been crushed by a difficult phase of life. Grief, divorce, a diagnosis, trauma, a devastating loss. Or people who look to the future and only see a dark corridor. Maybe you're going through something like that. Maybe you know someone who returned from a personal war without knowing who they are, without knowing where they're going. And that's precisely why this channel exists. *** Reborn Soldiers. Impossible transformations after war, ***. Here we tell moving stories of people who went through the fire of pain, were broken, destroyed, humiliated, and yet still found a way to be reborn. But before we talk about rebirth, we need to confront the fall. In his mind, there was no longer a mission, no longer a purpose. The silence of the house seemed louder than any gunshot. His family tried to understand. His friends said, "Move on," but none of those phrases resonated with his soul. How do you move on when you feel like you left a part of yourself on a battlefield on the other side of the world? How do you live a normal life after seeing what he saw? Have you ever felt that way? As if the rest of the world were in color, but your life had turned black and white? What he didn't know, and perhaps you still don't know either, is that often the most important mission doesn't happen under the sound of bombs, but in the silence of a new beginning. He believed his role as a soldier was over when he left the war. But in truth, the deepest part of his story hadn't even begun. What he was about to discover was that there was still someone to save, and that this someone would completely change the meaning of everything he had lived up to that point. What you're about to see is how a man who considered himself a failure, a burden, a directionless survivor, finds himself in a situation that forces him to look again at his own pain. And it is precisely in this unexpected encounter that he begins to realize that perhaps his mission wasn't over at all, perhaps it was just waiting for the right moment to be revealed. What if the most important part of your life began precisely on the day you're certain it's all over? He was certain that the war had taken everything from him: honor, purpose, and will to live. The gunfire stopped, the noise of the explosions faded, but inside, on the silent battlefield of his mind, the war continued. On the outside, he was the ex-soldier who had returned. On the inside, he was a man in ruins. Have you ever been through this? You don't need to have been in a war to understand that feeling of looking at your own history and thinking, "I used to be someone. Today, I'm just existing." Imagine him getting off the bus, backpack on his back, watching the city continue its normal rhythm. Cars passing by, people laughing, children running. Everyone seems to live in a world he no longer recognizes. The family's embrace comes full of relief and joy, but behind the polite smile, he feels an emptiness he can't explain. At night, his pillow is his only confidant. He wakes up sweating, with images that no one else sees. The clock ticks, the calendar turns, but inside him everything is frozen on that last day of war. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you. The soldier in our video is a living portrait of the poignant stories that almost no one listens to until the end. Stories of lives transformed by pain, of people who return from their battles carrying scars that don't show up in any examination. He looks at the medals on the dresser and feels not pride, but weight. Each symbol of honor reminds him of someone who didn't return. Each memory is another brick building a wall between him and the rest of the world. Little by little, he begins to believe a dangerous lie. My mission is over. I'm no longer useful. Perhaps you've never worn a uniform, but you know exactly what that feeling of an untimely end is like. It might have been after a separation, a bankruptcy, a loss, a disappointment so great it ripped the ground from under you. It's when you look to the future and see no future. It's when people say you're strong, but inside you feel broken. Have you ever been through that? That moment when it seems like the best of you is in a past that will never return? This is where the theme of this channel comes in strong. Asterisk, asterisk, reborn soldiers. Impossible transformations after war. Asterisk, asterisk. This isn't just a pretty title. It's a reminder that even the most broken stories can have an unexpected chapter. What you're about to see is much more than a war story. It's about a man who believed his story ended the day the guns fell silent, without imagining that a silent, invisible mission was being prepared for him right in the midst of his pain. As he tries to hide from the world, something begins to bother him. A look, a situation, someone even more lost than he is. At first glance, it seems like just another ordinary day, but that encounter will turn everything around. It is at that moment that life whispers something he doesn't want to hear. There's still someone who needs you, and he has no idea that. In trying to save that person, he will end up finding a new meaning for his own existence. What you're about to discover is how a soldier who considered himself finished, a man who only wanted to isolate himself, will be thrust into a mission that involves neither weapons nor orders nor uniform. A much deeper mission which begins when he realizes that the pain that almost destroyed his life may be exactly what will stop someone from giving up on their own life. When he begins to realize this, something changes very slowly inside him, almost imperceptibly. Like an ember that hasn't yet become a flame but hasn't gone out either. He remembers every sleepless night, every heavy thought, every time he thought the world would be better off without him. And for the first time he thinks, if I had given up, who would be here to support this person now? It is in this clash between past and present that his mission begins to be reborn, not as a battle cry, but as a whisper of compassion. And it is here that I want to bring you closer to this story, because perhaps as you listen to this, some part of that soldier's life resonates with yours. Maybe you've never returned from a battlefield, but you have returned from an abusive relationship, from grief, from an anxiety crisis, from bankruptcy, and felt that same emptiness. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below about what has touched you the most so far. It could be a phrase, a memory, a heartfelt confession. Sometimes putting what we feel into words is the first step to not carrying this weight alone. And believe me, many people will read your comment and think, I'm not the only one. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of content. When you like this video, YouTube understands that this message is important and starts showing it to other people who are also fighting silent battles. When you subscribe to Soldiers Reborn, when you click a button, you're saying, I want to keep following this kind of story. I want to be part of this community of people who didn't give up, even when broken. So if this resonates with what you're going through, like this video now and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapters of these exciting stories. And it's not just about numbers, statistics, or algorithms. Every comment you leave, every like, every subscription is a very real sign that there are people on the other side of the screen who care, who feel, who understand. It's almost as if you're saying to the soldier in this story and to all the soldiers who watch, I hear you, I see you, I've fought too, and ultimately that's what this channel thrives on, this invisible network of people who, even wounded, choose not to abandon each other. As our protagonist begins to realize that his pain can be a bridge and not a prison, I want you to imagine yourself walking alongside him, because what will happen to this soldier from here on out isn't just about him. It's about anyone who ever thought they were past their expiration date, that they had no more mission, that the best of life was already behind them. And as this story unfolds, you'll see how a simple encounter, a conversation, a seemingly small gesture can rekindle a light he swore he had lost forever. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject because to understand this soldier's transformation, we need to look not only at the scars but at what existed before them. Before any uniform, before the smell of gunpowder, before the impossible decisions, he was just an ordinary guy. He worked, laughed with friends, made simple plans, maybe get married, have children, buy a small house with a yard, have a barbecue on the weekend. He had the mindset of someone who believes that life follows a more or less predictable path. You study, you work, you build something, you retire, you enjoy life. No heroism, no war movie, just a normal journey like so many others. I am the narrator of this segment on the channel. Reborn Soldiers, Impossible Transformations After War, where I tell true stories. Inspired by real events of people who were destroyed by pain and yet were reborn. And behind these stories there is always a hidden truth. No one is born prepared for the impact of what will one day try to break us. That's how it was with him. When he decided to go to war, it wasn't because he wanted to become a symbol, but because he thought he was making the right, honorable, perhaps even necessary decision. Like many people do when they enter a battle of life without imagining how much it will cost. In the first few months away from home, he still had that sparkle in his eyes. He wrote messages to his family saying that everything was all right, that it was difficult, but bearable. He avoided talking about the hard parts, hiding the most difficult revelations so as not to worry anyone. But war doesn't respect good intentions. Gradually, the scenario changed. Friends who used to laugh with him at coffee time began to disappear from the table. Operations that seemed routine turned into living nightmares. He found himself facing choices that no one should have to make. Advance or retreat, protect one side and leave the other vulnerable. Obey orders even when his heart screamed otherwise. There was one particular night that never left his mind. Rain, mud, crackling radio, incomplete information. A miscalculation, a wrong move, a decision made in seconds. He survived. Some of his colleagues did not. From then on, he carried not only the weight of the war, but the weight of guilt. The feeling that if he had done something differently, perhaps someone would still be alive. This wound doesn't appear in medical reports, it doesn't come out in official documents. It's a silent wound lodged between memory and regret. It was that night that something inside him began to die, even though his body remained standing. When the war finally ended for him, the outside world celebrated. Photos, medals, speeches. Hero, some said. He smiled politely, but inside he only thought, if they knew what I saw, what I did, what I failed to do, they wouldn't call me that. The return home seemed, in theory, the end of the pain. In practice, it was the beginning of another kind of battle. Suddenly, the sound of a door slamming seemed like a gunshot. A motorcycle speeding down the street reminded him of a distant explosion. Fireworks on holidays brought back images he would give anything to forget. His family tried to help. They asked, "Are you okay? Do you want to talk about it?" But how could he explain a scenario that even he couldn't organize in his own head? So he fell silent. He isolated himself. The nights began to get longer, his sleep lighter. Any noise would wake him with a start. During the day, he functioned on autopilot, as if physically present but absent in spirit. He was there, sitting at the table, but his mind remained stuck somewhere between the past and the fear of the future. Perhaps you've never been to war, but you know what it's like to return from a storm and feel that no one understands what you carry inside. He truly believed the mission was over. Now it was just a matter of surviving. Getting up, working when he could, responding with short phrases, avoiding meetings, fleeing from deep conversations. His mindset was that of someone who had given up without admitting it aloud. The external war had ended, but the internal war continued silently, slowly eroding what little joy remained. It was in this gray scenario that something unexpected happened, an encounter with the pain of another person that mirrored his own. He was a young man. He could have been a neighbor, a nephew, a friend's son, someone from the community, a boy who on the outside seemed just too quiet, too distracted, keeping to himself, but in the details, the soldier began to recognize signs he knew well: the lost look, the emotional exhaustion, the automatic responses, the way he avoided eye contact when someone asked, "Are you okay?" He realized that this boy was fighting a silent battle very similar to his own. Depression, discouragement, a feeling of worthlessness, a desire to give up, and that affected him deeply. That day, something different happened. Instead of looking away as he always did, he saw himself in that young man. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't see himself only as a victim, but as someone who could prevent another person from sinking. It was as if life had placed a mirror before him, only in human form. That encounter was no mere coincidence. It was a turning point in his journey. Without realizing it, he began to ask small questions, to strike up conversations, to listen attentively. No prepared motivational speeches. He didn't have perfect phrases. He had real stories, with behind the scenes filled with pain and doubt. As the days went by, the young man began to speak a little more. He revealed that he was thinking of giving up, that he saw no point in continuing, that he felt no one understood him. Each word was a stab in the back and, at the same time, a call. The soldier listened and remembered himself. In the young man's face, I saw my own version from a few years ago. And that's when a new understanding began to emerge. Perhaps his mission had never been just to survive the war, but to learn to transform chaos into a point of support for those who came after. That was the big turning point. He understood that the greatest mission now was no longer to shoot, to obey cold orders, to advance on a visible enemy. The mission had changed its scenario. Now it was to embrace, to look into someone's eyes, to hold a hand, to share a hidden truth that almost no one dares to say aloud. I almost gave up too. The phrase that echoed within him gained a new meaning. In war, he saved bodies. Now he discovered that he could save souls starting with his own. Of course, this didn't happen without internal conflict. He was afraid to open up, ashamed of his past, afraid of being judged if he revealed the things he carried in his mind. Part of him wanted to remain silent, pretend nothing was happening, to procrastinate. But there was another part, increasingly strong, that whispered, if I don't do anything now, this person won't make it. And it was that voice he chose to listen to. A simple decision, but full of impact. He decided to act even though he was broken. The first concrete action may have seemed small to an outsider. A connection at a critical moment, an unexpected visit, a long conversation on the sidewalk, an invitation to join a support group. But behind this gesture lay a profound transformation of mindset. He stopped focusing solely on his own pain and began to ask, what can I do with what I've lived through? Instead of using the past as a prison, he began to see it as an arsenal of experiences that could bring healing to someone else. At one point, he made an even braver decision, to share his story openly for the first time. Not to appear strong, but precisely to show that he wasn't strong all the time. He spoke of sleepless nights, memories of war, guilt, and a feeling of emptiness. He spoke of the hidden truth behind the uniform of what many veterans feel but few verbalize. And to his surprise, the young man didn't judge him. On the contrary, he felt less alone. He realized he wasn't the only one carrying dark thoughts, and that this didn't make him weak, just human. From then on, a chain reaction began. The person he helped showed small signs of improvement. A shy smile here, a sincere thank you there, a message saying today was a little less hard. And each time he saw these signs, the soldier felt something reborn within him. It was as if by rescuing the other from the bottom of the well, he himself was pulled back to the surface. Impossible transformations began to emerge in places where before he only saw ruins. He discreetly began searching for other ex-soldiers, other traumatized people who also carried invisible scars, not as an expert, not as a therapist, but as someone who speaks from a place few dare to go, a place of vulnerability, of the backstage of pain, of revelations that hurt but liberate. In this process, his mission took on a new form. It ceased to be a story of destruction and became a journey of reconstruction. He left the war thinking the story was over. He thought the last chapter had already been written, and that the rest would only be a sad epilogue. But the truth is that his pain became a bridge to save lives he didn't even know he could reach. And this isn't just the story of a soldier. It's a mirror for anyone who ever thought they were at the end of the line when in reality they were just changing course. When we calmly examine this journey, we see something powerful. The transformation didn't come from denying the pain, but from deciding to face it and use it to serve someone else. The most important decisions weren't made on the battlefield, but in the silent moments when he chose to listen to the cry for help in the subtext of another person's gaze. There's a gigantic impact in realizing that what almost destroyed you might be precisely what makes you capable of understanding, embracing, and lifting up those on the brink of the abyss. So here's a question that applies to him as much as to you. Where are you in this story right now? Feeling aimless, directionless, thinking you're just surviving? Or starting to realize that your pain might be the key to helping someone? If all of this resonates with you in some way, comment below. I'm on this journey too. If you've stayed with me this far, first I want to sincerely thank you. Not everyone chooses to face this kind of story to the end, especially when it touches on places we usually hide. If at any point this soldier's journey touched on your own story, leave a comment letting me know you made it to the end by writing, "I'm with you until the end." This simple phrase becomes a code between us. Almost a silent handshake saying, "I understood that message. It was for me too." And if this content helped you see your pain and your mission in a different way, it makes sense for you to be closer to these stories. So if it makes sense to you, subscribe to the channel. Every time I sit down to write and tell a story like this, the idea is that it reminds you of something important. You are not alone in this internal struggle, and you still have a long way to go. Subscribing is just one click, but for me it's a clear sign that it's worth continuing to bring these narratives with truth, depth, and respect for your journey. The like button also falls into this same category. More than just a button, it shows that the connection we had here made a difference in your day. When you leave a like, you help this type of message continue to reach those who need to hear exactly this on any given night in silence, on the other side of the screen. And if you now feel that you don't want to simply get up and go about your routine as if nothing happened, there's a video here that complements this topic, further exploring this idea of mission, pain, and new beginnings. Click and continue with me there. Our conversation doesn't have to stop here.